The train's thunderous rumble as they sped past his residence jolted the loose window panes, causing flecks of paint to occasionally cascade to the floor. Under a solitary, threadbare blanket, he lay, trembling from the chill seeping through the aged building's crevices, neglected for far too long. Situated on the third floor of a dilapidated tenement in a poverty-stricken area, he shared the space with others teetering on the brink, navigating survival as best they could. Amidst the nocturnal symphony, he could hear the neighbors' snores penetrating the feeble barrier of walls, while his mother lay unconscious on the couch, a victim of cheap alcohol and drugs, her youth seemingly stolen by constant affliction and poor nourishment. Hunger gnawed at him incessantly, with the only respite being the meal provided at school, a primary motivation for his attendance. Despite his diminutive stature at 13, standing at 4 feet 6 inches and weighing a mere 67 pounds, his features echoed his Irish lineage, characterized by a fiery tinge to his blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and the unblemished complexion reminiscent of his ancestors. Occasionally, when the lady downstairs embarked on her weekly laundry routine, she allowed him to join in, affording him a semblance of cleanliness that belied the hardship he endured. Part-time, I toiled at a small grocery, exchanging labor for sustenance rather than wages. Mr. Johnson, the proprietor, took notice of my efforts to help myself and ensured I received a little extra for my toil. In the school environment, I immersed myself in studies, lacking the assertiveness of my larger peers, yet my diminutive stature afforded me a shield from their attention. Consequently, I remained unnoticed, as I posed no threat to their dominance. Through diligent study, I garnered the recognition of teachers who discerned my potential, a trait conspicuously absent or disregarded in many of my classmates. Despite my youth, a significant number of my peers had already succumbed to various fates: death, dropout, drug involvement, or incarceration for diverse offenses. The idea of fleeing crossed my mind, but where could I go? With no familial ties in the city and my sole maternal relative residing in Phoenix, reaching out to her seemed an insurmountable task. Each day, I navigated the treacherous streets, evading encounters with drug peddlers, refuse bins, inebriated individuals, and occasionally, corpses. With each passing day, my disdain for this existence deepened. Little did I know that an unforeseen sequence of events that afternoon would alter my destiny irrevocably. Ascending the worn steps, their aged boards groaning beneath even my slight weight, I approached our flat with a sense of unease. In this building, leaving one's door ajar was unheard of. Upon entering, a lump formed in my throat. My mother lay sprawled on the bed, arms splayed, seemingly at rest. However, upon closer inspection, I noticed 2 small bullet holes marred her temple, blood trickling into her hair. Collapsing to the floor, an initial wave of sorrow washed over me, swiftly followed by the stark realization of my newfound solitude. Despite her shortcomings as a provider, squandering welfare funds on groceries and substances, I mourned her loss. After all, she was my mother. Gathering my scant possessions into a paper bag from my room, I stole one last glance at her before shutting the door behind me. Heavy-hearted, I descended the stairs, yet within me, a glimmer of hope flickered. With nothing tethering me here anymore, I harbored the possibility of forging a better life elsewhere. Navigating the urban maze with no clear direction, I eventually found myself at the colossal train station. Venturing into the vast expanse, I became ensnared amidst the evening rush of commuters, swept into a train carriage, wedged uncomfortably between a leather briefcase and a corpulent woman. Initially struggling to disembark, I resigned myself to the journey as the locomotive lurched into motion. Anxiety gnawed at me throughout the lengthy trip. Initially unsettled by the rhythmic clatter of the wheels against the tracks, I gradually succumbed to the hypnotic melody of the rails. Alighting at a desolate station, I found myself surrounded by shiny automobiles reflecting the waning sun, departing passengers leaving me stranded on the platform. Gripping my paper bag tightly, I set out on foot, marveling at the town's pristine contrast to the chaos of the city: clean streets devoid of inebriates, unspoiled by overturned bins or cornered drug peddlers. Even the air bore a refreshing cleanliness, punctuated by the presence of trees adorning the sidewalks. Having never ventured beyond the city limits before, I felt as though I'd stumbled into a surreal tableau akin to those depicted on television before it succumbed to malfunction. Wandering through deserted streets, shuttered shops, and an absence of human presence, I found myself truly alone. "Excuse me, young man." Startled, I turned to face an elderly woman, her brown hair streaked with gray framing piercing blue eyes. Despite the signs of aging evident in her faded complexion, her face lit up with a warm smile. "Are you lost?" Her inquiry left me speechless, a gentle rain beginning to fall. With a gesture, she beckoned me into a nearby dress shop. "Come inside, dear, you'll catch your death out there." Intrigued, I complied, entering the shop filled with an array of colorful dresses, the unfamiliar scents assaulting my senses. "You seem quite lost. Have you run away from home?" "No, ma'am. I got stranded on the train, and here I am." "Have you had anything to eat today?" Reluctant to admit otherwise, the audible rumble of my stomach betrayed me before I could respond. "Why don't you join me for dinner tonight? We can discuss why you're here in Compton." With a reassuring squeeze of my hand, she ushered me inside, closing the door behind us. The journey to her home was brief, just a few blocks away. Her residence loomed large, dwarfing any dwelling I'd encountered save for those glimpsed on television. Bathed in a soft gray hue with white-trimmed windows, its expansive porch encircling the structure. A canopy of towering trees flanked the pathway, their foliage still glistening from the passing shower. Upon entering, I found myself in a cavernous room, dwarfing the entirety of my previous flat. Floral-patterned furnishings adorned the space, while colorful rugs adorned the hardwood floors. Before I could fully absorb the surroundings, she guided me into the kitchen, where copper pots dangled above the counter and a refrigerator resembling a compact car loomed. She prepared a meal, the sizzle of steaks and the aroma of cooking meat stirring memories of a rare indulgence. Seated at a table overlooking a tranquil stand of trees, I eagerly consumed the hearty fare, to her evident surprise. Encouraged by her warmth, my reticence melted away as she offered seconds, followed by a tempting cherry pie. Having savored each bite and imbibed 3 glasses of milk, I leaned back contentedly. "Shall we retire to the porch? You can share your story there." As she led the way, I followed, revealing, "I'm Raymond. Raymond Iverson. I'm 13, though my birthday's uncertain. The school claims it's June 10th. And your family, Raymond? Won't they be searching for you?" That unleashed a torrent of tears. I confided in her about my mother, my father's absence, the discovery of her lifeless body, every painful detail. "I understand. Why don't you stay here tonight? Tomorrow, we'll visit my brother. He can offer assistance." Overwhelmed, I had settled into a plush porch chair and succumbed to sleep in the time she took to make the call. Gently rousing me, she escorted me to a bedroom, ensuring I was comfortably settled before quietly exiting. The scent of freshly laundered sheets, the weight of the blankets enveloping me in unfamiliar comfort, and the satisfaction of a full stomach, all were luxuries I had seldom experienced. My weary body surrendered as sleep claimed me. As sunlight streamed through the open blinds, I stirred to the tantalizing aroma of sizzling bacon. After dressing, I made my way to the kitchen. "Good morning, Raymond. Breakfast will be ready shortly." Once again, I devoured everything on my plate, adhering to the familiar mantra ingrained from my school days, "Always eat when the opportunity arises." "Why don't you go freshen up while I take care of your clothes?" An hour later, nourished and clad in clean attire, we embarked on a journey across town. "Daniel, this is Raymond. He's in a rather unique situation, perhaps you can assist." Susan and I recounted my tale to her brother, Daniel, a judge well-versed in offering aid. "I'll make a few calls, Susan. I'll meet you at the store later." Later turned out to be 3 in the afternoon. Susan brought him along to the store, giving him a tour. "Perhaps you could assist me in organizing the inventory, Raymond. I'll guide you through it." Throughout the day, I busied myself arranging dresses, skirts, coats, suits, and various other garments. Susan joined me in the back when we heard the door chimes signal the arrival of a visitor. We both made our way to the front and encountered Judge Benson. I made inquiries, and it appears his account was accurate. His mother was discovered deceased, and the perpetrator apprehended the following morning. It seems to be related to a drug-related debt, and according to the officer I spoke with, the living conditions were dire. I've arranged an order that permits you to care for him temporarily. Child services will follow up shortly, but I've spoken with Marion, so there shouldn't be any issues. Susan beamed with relief, and in that moment, I sensed that something positive had transpired. The following day, I commenced my enrollment in school. That evening, Susan and I ventured out to purchase new clothes, my very first brand new attire, a stark departure from our usual thrift store finds. Upon returning, I settled into my new bedroom, taking a moment to survey my surroundings. To my surprise, I found the closet brimming with girls' clothing, evidence of the room's previous inhabitant. Each afternoon after school, I diligently tended to tasks at the store, restocking shelves, sweeping floors, and attending to whatever chores required attention. However, one fateful Friday afternoon, disaster struck as I accidentally spilled a box of coloring dye, saturating my new pants and leaving me drenched. Though I attempted to clean up the mess, the damage to my attire was irreversible, necessitating their disposal. Distraught, Susan found me in the back, tears streaming down my cheeks as I sat amidst the wreckage. "Raymond, what's wrong?" I stood, revealing the stained garments, fearing her wrath and the possibility of eviction. Yet, her response was unexpectedly understanding. "Is that all? We can remedy that, but you can't wear them home. They're destined for the trash." Lacking alternative clothing for me, Susan brainstormed before a solution dawned on her. "Take off all your clothes, Raymond. I'll be right back." In her arms, she cradled a stack of girls' clothing. "Here, try these on." Without hesitation, I donned the garments, a pair of panties, followed by a slip and a pink dress adorned with white trim. Susan also provided white shoes and socks. With my hair cascading past my shoulders, she produced a brush from her purse and skillfully styled it into a more feminine arrangement, securing it with a barrette. As I gazed into the mirror, I was astonished by the transformative effect of the dress. I spent the remainder of the afternoon in the outfit, strolling home as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Later, after dinner, I retired to my room and stood before the full-length mirror, beholding the reflection of a young girl for the first time. A sense of affirmation stirred within me, a silent affirmation of acceptance. That night, as I lay in bed, the image of the girl in the mirror lingered in my dreams, prompting introspection into the newfound comfort I felt in the dress. Saturday marked the busiest day at the store, and I typically spent the entire day working there. As I emerged in the kitchen for breakfast, clad in the same attire from the previous evening, Susan caught sight of my reflection in the window and turned to face me slowly. "You look quite lovely today, Raymond. Is this what you'd like to wear to work?" Unsure of what response she sought, I hesitated before admitting, "I've never worn a dress before. But I find myself rather fond of it." "I see. Well, if you're going to the store dressed like that, we'll need a new name for you. I can't call for Raymond and have you appear in attire like that." Her eyes twinkled as she contemplated. "How about Emily? Would you like to be called Emily?" "Yes, ma'am. Emily is a beautiful name. Come and have your breakfast, Emily. We have a busy day ahead." At the store, I assisted as usual, with Susan consistently referring to me as Emily. During quiet moments, Susan noticed me perusing the clothing racks. Later that night, she visited my room, settling onto my bed for a conversation. "Emily, I noticed you admiring the clothes in the store today. Do you truly enjoy wearing girls' clothing?" Unfazed by her directness, I affirmed my fondness for it. "It's as if I've discovered a new aspect of myself. At times today, I even found myself thinking of myself as a girl." "Then it's settled. We'll help you become the girl you feel you are," Susan declared, retrieving clothing from the closet. "I want you to try these on, Emily. Let's explore how we can transform you into a girl." Skirts and dresses accumulated on the bed. As Susan continued, "You'll also need different undergarments, Emily. You may have noticed that many of the younger girls who visit the shop have larger chests. You should too." It wasn't until nearly 9 p.m. that evening that we finalized my wardrobe, sorting through what fit and what didn't. "Tomorrow's Sunday. How about we attend church and then have dinner out, as Emily?" Susan suggested, to which I beamed and embraced her. The following morning, I rose bright and early. Susan instructed me to thoroughly wash my hair, so I stood in the shower, ensuring every inch was impeccably clean. Clad in her robe, Susan guided me through the intricacies of women's attire, starting with a training bra. With its modest cups, we improvised by filling them out with thin socks. Next, Susan helped me into a blue dress with white trim along the neckline and sleeves, its hemline grazing just below my knees. I felt a sense of radiance as I slipped into the opaque pantyhose, relishing the smooth look they gave my hairless legs. Susan then presented me with black heels boasting a modest 1-inch heel. Though I initially wobbled, I savored the sensation they provided. "Follow me, Emily. We need to style your hair," Susan directed, applying gel and setting my hair in rollers. Once finished, I was adorned with rollers from crown to ends, a plastic cap placed over my head before the dryer was switched on. "Sit tight while I get dressed," Susan instructed before departing. Upon Susan's return, my hair had dried, and she commenced the process of brushing it out. Waves cascaded around my head, with Susan expertly trimming my bangs to the appropriate length. She then sprayed it with hairspray for added hold. Susan uncapped a small jar of foundation and, using 2 fingers, began to apply it to my face. A touch of blusher and a light rose lipstick completed my makeup. It was my inaugural experience with makeup, and the scent, taste, and texture of it left me feeling utterly delightful. After attending to her own hair, Susan re-entered the room and handed me a purse before we departed for church. Despite my excitement, I struggled to recall most people's names, yet they embraced me for who I appeared to be, a 13-year-old girl. During our meal at the restaurant, Susan shared the news she had received the previous day. "Daniel called me yesterday and informed me that the state has granted permission for me to keep you with me, if you wish to stay. You'll need to express your consent in court, and if you agree, I'll initiate the adoption process." Without hesitation, I affirmed my desire, marking the commencement of our journey as a genuine family. "You have another semester remaining until school concludes, so you'll continue attending as Raymond. However, next year, you'll be enrolled in a different school, so we'll have to see if you can attend as Emily." My smile illuminated the table, prompting Susan's gaze across from me. She saw a young, radiant girl of Irish descent, her reddish hair framing her lively countenance. Her thoughts drifted to her late daughter, Amy, tragically lost in a bus accident on Interstate 95, a devastating event claiming the lives of 18 children, the darkest day of Susan's life. Determined to ensure my happiness and protection, she vowed to safeguard me as her own. I faithfully attended school each day, but on weekends, I embraced my identity as Emily, honing my skills in makeup application and hairstyling while mastering the intricacies of my clothing's hooks, fasteners, and zippers. Daniel had encountered me as Emily on numerous occasions, yet respecting his sister's discretion, he remained silent. By the onset of summer, I had curated a wardrobe of my own and had gained months of experience assisting customers at the store. Gradually, the community became accustomed to seeing Emily rather than Raymond, blurring the distinction between the 2 personas. Susan and I stood before another judge, to avoid any conflict of interest with Daniel, who granted Susan's sole guardianship over me. 30 minutes later, our desires were fulfilled as he approved Susan's adoption of me. Eager to celebrate, Susan arranged to rendezvous with her brother and his wife for dinner that evening. I felt apprehensive when Susan proposed the idea of disclosing my desire to continue dressing as a girl to her brother and his wife, Nancy. She believed it would ease tensions for everyone involved. Choosing the outfit that Susan favored, I began to prepare myself. I slipped on the simple cotton panties effortlessly and discreetly tucked to conceal my modest masculinity. The bra, only slightly larger than the initial one I wore, boasted an A cup. To achieve a natural appearance for my chest, I experimented with various methods, ultimately settling on filling the bra cups with measured amounts of birdseed contained in the toes of old nylons. After adjusting the bra, I proceeded to the bathroom. Having mastered the art of makeup application, I applied foundation evenly using my fingers to achieve a flawless complexion. Soft shades of gray and rose adorned my eyelids, complemented by a light brown eyeliner and a touch of rose blush. Returning to my room, I retrieved the black and white dress from its hanger. The skirt, black, and the top, white, effortlessly slipped over my head before I secured the zipper. The sailor's collar atop the dress, ending just above my chest, added a charming touch. The pleated skirt grazed my knees, its hemline measuring at least 2 inches above. Stepping into my shoes, I admired my reflection in the mirror as I delicately applied light rose lipstick and adorned myself with white earrings and a beaded necklace. A brush through my hair, secured with a white barrette for added flair, completed my ensemble. With purse in hand, I descended the polished stairs to the living room. Daniel and Nancy were seated with Susan as I entered the room. "Oh my! Daniel, you never mentioned how lovely she is." Daniel gestured for me to take a seat. "Emily, we'd like you to have a chat with Nancy for a bit. Your mom and I will go for a walk." Though unsure of what was unfolding, I nodded in agreement and offered a sweet smile to Nancy. Once alone, Nancy invited me to sit beside her. "I've reviewed the reports regarding your mother's passing and your living circumstances prior to coming here. I also spoke with Mrs. Bertram from your former school. She described you as a bright student in a challenging situation and suggested that you might be easily intimidated. Could you share with me why you enjoy dressing as a girl?" I struggled to articulate a clear response. "I suppose ever since I first wore that dress home after spilling dye on my clothes, I've known that I enjoy wearing girls' clothing. It's as if a light switched on." "My Mom, let me explore it further. I feel more at ease this way than I did before. Being small, I was often picked on or overlooked. Heck, most of the girls in my class were taller than me. This way, I feel like I fit in better, and I prefer it." "I understand. Can we chat again later? Just the two of us?" "Of course. I'd like that," I responded as Nancy took my hand, leading me out onto the porch just as Daniel and Mom returned. We dined at a lovely restaurant beside the river. Nancy observed my conduct closely, finding nothing unusual for a 13-year-old girl. Considering my background, she marveled at my manners and polite demeanor. Susan seemed to notice and remarked, "Emily and I have been having evening lessons on proper table etiquette. She's a quick learner." The dinner was delightful, with only one mention of me. "A Mr. Johnson contacted the welfare office trying to check on you. He was concerned when you didn't return after your mother's passing. Perhaps you should give him a call. I have his number here." He slid a slip of paper across the table to me. Later, back at home, Susan inquired if Nancy and I had a pleasant conversation. "Yes, Aunt Nancy is very kind. She asked me many questions about dressing as a girl, but I didn't withhold any information." "Anything, dear, not nothing. Now go get ready for bed," Susan corrected gently. As I retired to bed, Mom joined her brother and his wife on the porch. "Well, Nancy, did you gain any insights beyond what I told you?" "He isn't confused, if that's what you're wondering. He genuinely enjoys presenting as a girl. I believe if given the choice, he would opt to be a girl full-time. Growing up in a harsh reality, he has discovered a part of himself previously unknown and accepted it as his reality, as he always does. Emily identifies as a girl in a boy's body. The question is, what do we do about it? If we allow her to dress as a girl all the time, what about school? I don't want a repeat of last year's incident, Daniel recalled, referring to a 14-year-old boy who tragically took his own life after being found dressed as a girl, his anguish detailed in a letter discovered in his skirt pocket. I agree, Daniel. But if we change her name and find a plausible excuse for her to avoid gym classes, she could attend as Emily full-time, Nancy suggested. I'll look into it, but I want her to confide in me first, Daniel affirmed. 2 days prior to my birthday, I found myself seated in the office of Judge Daniel Benson. The scent of rich leather mingled with the attorney's aftershave beside me, offering a sense of security. Emily, meet Chris Verson. He's the attorney I've assigned to represent you. Your mother has briefed you on why you're here, but I'd like you to express to Chris and me what you truly desire. I proceeded to articulate my reasons for preferring to live as a girl and my fervent wish to do so permanently. After a brief discussion between my attorney and the judge, I was handed a document to sign. This isn't legally binding until Susan signs it, but it signifies your wishes. I hereby grant your request. From now on, you are Emily Parker Hauser. Congratulations! On my 14th birthday, Mom organized a grand celebration, inviting several of the girls who frequented our store. I was elated as I welcomed each guest, feeling like I was floating on air. It was unlike any birthday I had experienced before. As I opened the door once more, I was surprised to find Mr. Johnson and his wife Rebecca standing there. Hello, dear. You look absolutely lovely, just as I always imagined you would, Mr. Johnson remarked fondly. I embraced them warmly and led them to the backyard. Mom, meet Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, I introduced, with a hint of pride, my kind of grandparents. Their aged faces lit up with smiles. Has she been behaving herself for you, Mrs. Hauser? We miss her dearly, Mrs. Johnson inquired. A commotion from the backyard diverted Susan's attention, and she went to investigate. I took their hands and guided them to join the festivities. Several of the girls, familiar with me from the store, formed a circle around me. We're heading to the pool on Friday, Emily. You have to come. It's where we hang out with the guys. Brittany, the bubbly one, exclaimed. Cara and Natalie chimed in, expressing how fun it would be, but I confessed that I couldn't swim. I don't even own a swimsuit. They were aware of the hardships I had faced and my adoption, but beyond that, my past remained a mystery to them. Eager for companionship, I shared a condensed version of my story, mentioning that the Johnsons were akin to grandparents. You don't have to swim, Emily. Just stand by and let the boys come to you. That's what we do. I'll need to check with Mom, but it should be okay. The gifts varied from scarves to entire outfits from Daniel and Nancy, to jewelry and makeup from the girls. It was an enchanting party, the most memorable I had ever experienced. Mom extended an invitation for the Johnsons to stay with us, so I eagerly pleaded with them to remain a few days longer. All right, dear. Just a few days, Rebecca agreed. She had always noticed a feminine inclination in me and was the least taken aback by the change in my lifestyle. As a token of her affection, she bestowed upon me an old family heirloom. I want you to have this, Emily. It belonged to my mother. Since we don't have children of our own, and you've adopted us as grandparents, I want you to have it. It was an exquisitely delicate ivory cross set in intricately designed gold, roughly the size of a $50, hanging from a gold chain. It was the most cherished gift I had ever received. Mom! Look what Grandma gave me! I exclaimed, rushing over to show her the pendant. Susan recognized its value but also understood its heartfelt significance. When she had invited them, Rebecca had shared some details about their past. We had 2 children. The Nazis took us and we were separated into different camps. We lived in Hungary then. It took me 3 years after the war to find Henry. I located him in an army camp where he was working as a nurse's aide. The children had been buried in a mass grave outside Warsaw. We never had any other children, and until Emily came along, my Henry was always miserable. Look at them now. Susan turned around and saw me sitting next to him, engaged in conversation. He wore a wide smile, and Rebecca noticed a sparkle in his eyes for the first time in many years. She is a blessing, Susan. She has the ability to bring joy to people's lives. One day, she will make a man very happy. I'll shed tears at her wedding, but she'll be thinking only of him." In Rebecca's words, Susan sensed the pain of her loss, those moments after her children were killed, but also the happiness that Emily had brought into their lives. The following day, with both Rebecca and Mom closely supervising, I purchased my very first swimsuit. It was a dark blue one-piece with a short skirt attached. Now at 14, I was using a slightly larger silicone form, but Mom knew we would have to adjust that soon, especially after she saw me in the swimsuit. Later, Mom treated us all to the beauty salon. I received my very first girl hairstyle, a page boy with permed curls at the ends. Mom commented that it looked very becoming on me. By the time they returned home, I was exhausted. The day's excitement had drained me of energy. I sat beside my newly adopted grandpa and quickly drifted off to sleep with his comforting arms around me. Neither of us stirred, and he insisted that Mom leave me be. "She's so tired, and I miss this so much. Let her stay here with me," he pleaded. Susan couldn't refuse. The next day, the Johnsons had to depart, but we all pledged to keep in contact. I noticed the tears in their eyes as they drove off, fearing it might be the last time I'd see them. "Emily, we need to get you to a doctor," Mom said. "You're at a stage where we should discuss medication to help develop your own feminine chest. I've already scheduled an appointment with Dr. Stacy for tomorrow morning. He's aware of your circumstances, so there's no need to worry." I entered the doctor's office and waited in the reception area until my name was called. Dr. Stacy, an experienced older man, conducted a thorough examination, my first ever. He scrutinized every aspect of my health, from bodily fluids to pulmonary function, weight, height, and muscle tone. The process lasted 3 hours. I perched on the small examination table, draped in one of those open-backed robes, feeling a slight chill as he reviewed the test results. "So, you're transitioning to being a girl. I see you've even changed your name," he remarked. "All right, I'll prescribe something for you to take. Follow the instructions precisely and come see me once a month." With that, he excused himself to allow me to get dressed. As I glanced at the prescription, though the words were unfamiliar, I understood I was embarking on a significant journey toward embracing my true identity as a girl. Friday morning, I relaxed in the tub, taking the time to shave off the few hairs on my face, as well as my legs and arms. Carefully, I retrieved my swimsuit from the dresser and eased into it, ensuring there were no traces of my male features visible. After brushing out my hair and throwing on a pair of shorts, I descended the stairs. "Heading out, Mom." "I'll be back for dinner," I called out. "All right, sweetie." "Have fun," came her reply. I rendezvoused with Brittany and Cara at Natalie's house, and together, the four of us made our way to the pool. Natalie boasted the most voluptuous figure among us, taking after her mother with wider hips and a larger chest. Brittany and I were both just starting to develop, while Cara possessed an average physique, with a modest bust and slightly widened hips. After securing a table and grabbing some lounge chairs, it didn't take long for the young men to start making their way over. One of them couldn't seem to tear his gaze away from my fair skin, though he lacked the courage to approach. Cara was the first to notice his lingering glances. "Hey, Emily! You see that guy by the diving board? He's been checking you out since we got here. That's Carol Frison's brother, Brian," she pointed out. I glanced in his direction. "Oh, really? He's kinda cute, but if he wants to chat, he'll have to make the first move and come over here." The girls all nodded in agreement, but Cara took matters into her own hands and strolled around the pool, positioning herself near him. "Brian, we've noticed you've been eyeing Emily. If you want to meet her, I can make the introductions, but you'll need to come over," she announced before sauntering away, delivering the message in the age-old manner of young girls, through a friend. Just before I had to leave, Brian finally mustered the courage to approach. Cara facilitated the introductions. "Perhaps I'll see you around here again, Emily," he ventured. I simply smiled in response, saying, "Perhaps." As I walked away, I could sense his gaze following my feminine sway. Over the next few days leading up to Sunday, I was occupied with work at the store. With summer hours being shorter, Mom and I found time in the evenings to engage in various activities. Lately, I had been assisting in the kitchen every night, endeavoring to learn how to cook. Mom, who was approaching 53 when I came to live with her, seemed fatigued at times. Cooking provided me with a means to let her unwind. That evening, I prepared her favorite meal, spaghetti with garlic bread, accompanied by string beans and almonds. After dinner, we slipped into our robes and relaxed on the patio, watching television together. It took 3 weeks before Brian finally reached out to me. He invited me to a show on Saturday night. As I had never been on a date before, Mom took the opportunity to lay down some guidelines about proper conduct for young ladies and their dates. For the occasion, I opted for a short skirt and a sweater. Brian seemed nervous, and Mom suspected it might have been his first date as well. Throughout the evening, he treated me with politeness, though he appeared unsure of himself. In the theater, he tentatively placed his arm around my shoulder, prompting me to draw closer to him. Lost in a dreamlike state, I found myself missing most of the movie. When we reached my doorstep, he attempted to kiss me, but his aim was off, landing on my chin instead. On his second try, he managed just fine. As I entered the house and closed the door behind me, a broad smile spread across my face as I replayed every moment of the evening in my mind. By August, I began to sense a tingling on my chest and mentioned it to Mom. "Let me see." I took my blouse and bra off. Small mounds were beginning to appear, my aureoles were swelling, and there was a definite chest development. "It looks like you'll have a woman-like chest pretty soon, Emily. I would guess by October you won't need the forms anymore." That was wonderful news to my ears. School started 2 days before Labor Day, and I was just one of several hundred students. I was assigned a classroom, given my books, and I began my first year of high school. The doctor had been seeing me monthly, pleased with my progress, the hormones he had started me on, doing their work. By October, just like Mom had predicted, I could wear a full A-cup bra without any other filling than myself. I excelled in school, especially math and English. At Christmas time I called and asked if my adoptive grandparents would like to spend the holiday with us, and they agreed. Mom and I met them at the train station a few days before Christmas. By now I had developed a B-cup, my hips had widened, my figure 34, 23, 35. All signs of the waif that had landed there just those few months ago gone. In every action, mannerism, movement, and shape, I was a young girl. Rebecca and Henry, on their visits, doted on me, and I soaked it up like all kids do. I had Henry wrapped around my little finger. Because my diet had improved, I began to grow, and by the time I was 16, I was a trim 112 pounds at 5 feet 3 inches tall and wore a perfect size 8. In high school, I had been taking computer classes, and with a little urging, I convinced Mom to let me update the store's records. By the end of my junior year, I was doing all of the books and ordering clothes for the store. Profits had increased with my ability to quickly order whatever we needed. I had also started to make a few investments. With Mom's approval, I had turned a few $1,000s into several $100,000. Henry and Rebecca had wanted to sell their store, so I urged them to move closer, which they did. They now lived just a few miles away. As I matured into womanhood, Brian transitioned into manhood. Towering over 6 feet tall, he became robust and muscular. Though we remained close friends, his affections were directed towards Natalie, Brittany, Cara, and I entered our final year of high school still single. Christmas at our house was always lively, especially with the addition of Henry and Rebecca, which brought me immense joy. Mom, who had spent 7 years without her own daughter before my arrival, found renewed purpose in life. Without saying a word, she gradually replaced all the pictures of Amy with mine. A cherished photo of the 4 of us adorned the mantel, Henry's favorite. As a special gift, Mom and I had a larger version made for him this year. I also struck up a friendship with Eric. Similar to Brian, he was tall with fair hair and deep black eyes that sent shivers down my spine whenever he looked at me. We all had a delightful time exchanging gifts and laughter, with Henry's tired face lighting up whenever I sat beside him, seemingly shedding years off his 75. However, there was a fleeting moment of unease when I introduced him to Eric, noticed both by Mom and Rebecca. I attended a college nearby so I could continue working at the store on weekends. One evening, while closing up shop, the phone rang. Mom's voice was filled with urgency and distress. "Emily, go to the hospital right away, now." "It's Rebecca." I swiftly locked up and rushed to the hospital. Henry was in the waiting room, tears streaming down his face as he quietly wept. "She's gone, Emily." The doctors did everything they could. It felt like a blow to the gut. The pain of loss was almost unbearable for me, but I knew it was even worse for Grandpa. I embraced him, and we sat there, at a loss for what to do. Mom, along with Daniel and Nancy, escorted us home. Henry was in the room next to mine, and I could hear his soft sobs as he mourned the loss of his beloved. It was a difficult night for everyone. Brittany and Cara reached out the next morning, offering to manage the store so we could take a few days off. The days following the funeral were marked by occasional moans and sobs, with Henry spending his time immersed in old photographs of his beloved Rebecca. It was up to me to bring him back to the present. Sitting beside him, I clasped his hand in mine, feeling the once rough surface now softened, yet retaining its underlying strength. "Grandpa, she's gone now, and nothing can replace her. But I need you more than ever. I'll be having my surgery soon, and when I get married, I want you to walk me down the aisle. You've always been there for me, and I still need you." He enveloped me in his arms, cradling my head against his chest. I was the one who had embraced them into my life, not the other way around. I was the one who had given them a reason to live after years of mourning their children. I was the one who had given him a renewed sense of purpose. He remembered the small, undernourished boy who used to sweep his store, now a beautiful, intelligent young woman. He loved me as if I were his own, and in many ways, I was. We sat there, arm in arm, for hours until I drifted off to sleep against his chest, and he rested his head against mine. I pursued my studies in accounting at school and graduated with a degree in economics. Thanks to my investments, the store had expanded, and we now employed a team of 4 sales staff. My surgery had been scheduled months in advance, and just a few days after my 21st birthday, I underwent the procedure that would allow Eric and me to start our own family. It was the culmination of a life filled with self-discovery and fulfillment for me. Eric proposed, and in a grand ceremony, Henry, slightly stooped at 80 but dignified in his tuxedo, proudly escorted me down the aisle to meet my soon-to-be husband. Eric worked for a home development company, and we settled into our own house. 2 years later, we adopted a baby girl and named her Rebecca. Henry was overjoyed, almost bouncing with happiness. As he held the child in his arms, he noticed a simple white ivory cross on a gold chain around her neck, a poignant reminder of the love and legacy Rebecca had left behind.